Hi, I'm Josh, the dad of hobbies. Today's hobby, TV. Specifically, 5 TV shows you forgot about. In fact, these are shows that are probably so out there, most of you have never even heard of them, but they have a really dedicated and cult fan base. These are shows that I loved when I was watching them. Hopefully, if you've seen them, you love them too, but if not, you might discover some new shows that you should definitely go watch on whatever streaming service you can find them on. These are shows that are truly fantastic and absolutely deserve to have as many people watching them as possible. So let's go ahead and dive in. 5 TV shows that you forgot about, or maybe never even knew. Let's get started. On my list is Touching Evil. This is specifically the USA Network version, the US version. The show was sort of a US take on the British version, but had some significant differences. But as you can see here from the cast alone, this was a star maker well before all of these folks were stars. So this ran in 2004. For those that may remember shows at that time, the USA Network had a variety of different dramas that they were getting into. This was one that they tried. It didn't really work. It only lasted one season, 13 episodes. But Jeffrey Donovan, Vera Farmiga, Kevin Durand, Zach Reiner, Bradley Cooper, very young Bradley Cooper in here, and many more. Just a whole host of folks that went on to have incredible careers. The show was about FBI agent Jeffrey Donovan's character, who had gotten shot in the line of duty, came back, but he had gotten shot in the head, and it caused a change in his brain chemistry. And so he's sort of an oddball character, but it very much dealt with very dark crimes and had a lot of very sort of true crime mixed with serial killer type of stuff. This was well before all of the podcasts and all the true crime love that people have now. We're talking over 20 years ago at this point. I loved this show and I loved what they did with it. It was very character driven, but as I said, unfortunately, it didn't last very long. But you can catch this streaming somewhere, and I do recommend watching it. I understand why it was not as popular. I get that the shows in USA at the time, think like Monk and Psych and all those others were definitely going to be the ones that made it out of the first season. But I really like this show, and it's got a whole host of cameo actors that you truly never expect to see that young. So definitely give this a shot. Next up, number 4 is On the Lot. So nobody that I've ever talked to knows this show. This was, again, a one-season show. This was, as you can see, produced by Mark Burnett and Steven Spielberg. This was a reality show for movie directors. So think American Idol or America's Got Talent, but instead of singing or performing, it was directing films. There was a lot of problems that went into the show. There was a lot of controversy in the production and behind the scenes. It probably wasn't ever going to get past one season by the nature of what went into pre-production alone. But I really like this show, and this was in a time where all of the competition shows, right? Mark Burnett, of course, being the reality and competition TV show guy. This was really at a time where those were all coming all over the place, and this one just slipped in. So the prize for this was Steven Spielberg, who obviously, one of the major directors. He also runs DreamWorks, and he gave the winner $1 million to fund their first film produced by DreamWorks. And it did happen. The winner got their prize. But the show could never decide if it wanted to focus on the stories of the people, which is what a lot of reality TV does, or focus on the product that they were putting out, which is the other half of what reality TV does, right? So if you watch American Idol or The Voice, it's about their singing and it's about their talent. And then things like Big Brother or The Challenge or Amazing Race or Survivor is about the people. And this, you couldn't figure out what the show wanted to focus on. But you had an incredible amount of talent behind this show. You had Gary Marshall and Carrie Fisher as the judges, plus a guest judge every week. You had a variety of different people and actors doing the short films that the directors were putting together. The directors, some of these guys were incredibly talented at the time. This is now going back to I want to say 2009 is when this aired. Somebody fact check me on that, but this was a show that just really slipped by that I think could have done better had they produced it better. And I think there's still room in the reality TV show world today, even for a show like this, something that isn't just about singing or performing, but showcases talent in a new way. There's one on Netflix, Blown Away, does the glass blowing, which is really cool. And I know that there's a couple others, but something about directing and filmmaking, I think, has a place. And they tried it didn't work, but I think you could try it again. So On the Lot, definitely try to see if you can find it and watch it. It's fun. Uh, Next up is CBS's Zoo. So this people actually might know. This truly might be one that you forgot. CBS is sort of infamous for doing these summer blockbuster type shows. You had Under the Dome, you had Zoo, you had a couple others. Um, I love this show. This actually lasted 3 seasons, but it did get canceled on a cliffhanger. And again, look at the cast: James Wolk, Nancy Nancy. Um, you have Alyssa Diaz, you have Billy Burke. You've got these folks who just go on to make these careers. The show's premise was the animal kingdom wakes up and realizes what humanity's been doing to them and to the planet, and they start fighting back. You're not getting a bunch of talking animals, but you are getting animal reactions in a way that was very cool to see. It was a take on the human and animal kingdom relations, but wasn't preachy. It wasn't true activism. I do believe, and again, somebody fact check me, that this show was based on a book by, I want to say, James Patterson, or one of those types of authors that sort of delved into this a little bit. But the show was really well done. It had a lot of good tech and a lot of good CGI behind it, and it just was one of those CBS summer shows that they couldn't keep on the air after a while. But I think it really did a good job of showcasing how these groups of people, because each of these people has a different specialty, how they all come together and have to face this problem. And you get things like corporate politics, you get things like economy, you get game hunters, you get animals fighting back in very cool ways. A lot of thought clearly went into the show. I'll admit it did get a little silly by season 3, right? It was a struggle that I think to keep the problem going, and that's ultimately why I feel like I canceled. But that first season especially, and arguably season 2 as well, were just really, really well done and really tight. So CBS Zoo, you probably could find this on Paramount, but if not, other streaming services may have it. I do recommend checking this out. Next on my list here, this is one of the most beloved miniseries that if you know this, you truly know it. So NBC in the 90s did a whole slew of TV events, and I think the TV event concept as a whole has just been lost to time. And other than your award shows or things like that, but NBC used to do these major TV events. There was Alice in Wonderland with a cast that would blow you away. They did Merlin, not the UK BBC version, but one with Sam Neill, and a host of other folks. You had Gulliver's Travels, you had Jason and the Argonauts, you had all of these fantasy-based TV events, and the 10th Kingdom was one of those. It was a book that was written by Simon Moore, turned into a TV show, and it was this 5-episode miniseries that was just an incredible production, especially given the time and technology. And look at the cast here, right? Diane Wiest, Ed O'Neill, Cameron Manheim, John Larroquette. You've got a host of actors here that not only go on to make incredible careers, but had incredible careers even at the time. And it is a truly fantastical miniseries and TV show that I recommend everybody watch because it's got something for everybody. The premise of the show is that a young woman named Virginia, who's Kimberly Paisley Williams' character, ends up through a series of events, basically getting pulled into the Nine Kingdoms, the realm of the Nine Kingdoms, which is the every fairy tale and fantasy world that we know, right? So you have Snow White, you have Cinderella, you have evil queen, and these kingdoms are basically set after what we know of the stories, right? So after Happily Ever After, and our world, our modern world, is the 10th kingdom, and the story that follows through this sort of fairy tale with modern twist, these characters getting pulled in, and how they go about trying to get back home. It is just wonderful to watch. It is a true modern fairy tale. And for those of you who are fans of this, who do know this, Simon Moore actually wrote a sequel that he is trying to get published. You can go find on YouTube. There's a YouTube channel called The 10th Kingdom Connection. It's also a Facebook group where Simon actually reads the first chapter of the sequel, and he's trying to actively get it published. And that video of him reading it was current to this year, 2025. So there's more of this to come. But this miniseries and the other ones, and I believe Simon Moore was even involved in some of the other ones too. If you know this, you love it, and if you don't know it, trust me when I tell you, you're gonna want to go watch it. It can be found on Amazon. I know that for sure because I've watched it recently. NBC might also have it, Peacock, but definitely on Amazon Prime you can find it. And it's just a joy to watch, and even now, almost 30 years later, it is not outdated. It is not overly silly. It is exactly the right amount of fun and kitschy and fairy tale-esque type of story mixed with a good, very clear, character-driven problem to solve. And Scott Cohen, who some may know from Gilmore Girls as well as various other things, he shines as Wolf. He is far and away the star of this series in every best way possible. In a whole host of famous and infamous actors, Scott Cohen really takes this role to heart, and anybody with any level of theater experience can easily tell how much work and passion he put into his role, and it pays off so well. So, 10th Kingdom is number 2 on the list here, and the number 1 show that I think people forgot about is Person of Interest. Person of Interest, by almost any measure, was a successful show. It was on CBS. It aired on primetime. It had 5 seasons. It had a cast that, again, is an incredible amount of talent. But somehow, nobody ever watched this show. Everybody sort of kind of remembers a little bit of it. But this show was so ahead of its time. So you can see here, created by Jonathan Nolan, who was the brother of Christopher Nolan, who did all of the Batman films, who did Inception, Oppenheimer, right, and all these other films. And so both Nolans were sort of involved, but Jonathan Nolan, his brother, created the show. The premise of the show is that post 9/11, a machine was made to try and predict terrorist attacks. And the person who made that machine also ended up finding ways to use it to predict any sort of crime. And so giving the government the ability to predict terrorist attacks, he then takes the ability to predict crimes in New York City, where he lives, and has these agents and this team of people that he starts putting together to help solve these crimes. And that alone, as you can probably guess, has a variety of different implications. But the show goes into what the power of surveillance is, where the boundary can lie in too much oversight, what the government can and should be doing or doesn't do with some of this information versus what an individual can do, where things like police involvement lie versus government agents versus people who are quote unquote dead to the world, so to speak, right? Burned agents or people who don't actually exist on the grid. The power of a computing technology that does this. This touched on AI, right? And so this show came out in 2011-ish, around there, right? Around the early 2010s. And just imagine, with all the AI stuff that's coming out now, what this show could have done, right? So it did last 5 seasons. It was a success. And every episode had a purpose. Every episode had a function. The show started off doing sort of the crime of the week, the situation of the week, and even that was good. It was very, very good. But very quickly you get into some of the mythology of it, and where the show's philosophy can go, and this was a philosophy show in the best way possible. Um, and so I definitely encourage everybody to watch this show because you're going to get so much out of it and so much relevant to today's technological world and government oversight and all this stuff. Person of Interest is definitely the show that I think it speaks to today in a way that was well before its time. And again, as I mentioned before, look at the cast: Jim Caviezel, um, Emerson, Taraji P. Henson, prior to Empire, right? Prior to all of her movies. I mean, you just get a ton of great talent in here. So that's it. Those are the 5 TV shows that you forgot, or maybe never knew. Um, as always, thanks for watching. Feel free to like, subscribe, or follow Dad of Hobbies across all your social media platforms. And let me know what you think of these shows if you haven't watched them. And if you're a fan of them, let's connect and talk about them more. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.